Good afternoon everyone, and I have a little bit of an impromptu video for you today. So I've just been given the opportunity to spend 1 hour out on the street with a very special camera, very special expensive camera, which you would have seen from the title of this video is the Leica Q343. Now I am in two minds about buying it, and this is sort of like taking it out for a day, seeing if it gels with me, which I think it might, because if any of you have watched the channel for a while, you know that 40mm is one of my all-time favorite focal lengths. We have a 40mm Apo Summicron, 61 megapixels, a compact design. Like, there is a lot to love about this camera if you're into your whole fixed lens, compact, street photography setup, etc. 1 second. So my goal is to spend the next hour walking around the city doing some street photography, just like how I used to. These days I'm either using a 28, 35 or a 50, but generally a 28 or a 50mm lens. If you guys, like I said, have watched the channel for a while, I've made plenty of videos and I've owned plenty of 40mm lenses. And this has probably got to be the most special and fantastic one out of all of them. So I'm just going to make a few comments while I walk around and take some photos on the camera, what I feel about its image quality, ergonomics, handling, things like that. I mean, instantly, I'll tell you straight away, the ergonomics are pretty rubbish when your hands are as big as mine anyway, but that's without any grip or anything like that. So we're just going to walk around and really see what this camera can do and see what sort of photos we can make with this really natural 40mm, 43mm field of view. It is raining today, it's overcast, so I'm pretty much shooting in black and white like I like to anyway, but it's good to know that the camera is weather sealed and you don't have to worry about that. Few spots of rain, few drops on the camera, not an issue at all. It's sealed and protected, so another plus. No, you always hear about, you hear about what everybody, how much they win. You never hear about what people lose, I suppose. No. I've always found it's the opposite way. But yeah, anyway, thanks guys. Snap a couple photos. Have a nice day. So one fantastic thing, just like that situation there, is obviously the 43mm being almost exactly, if not exactly, what the human eye sees. So when you see a composition walking around, you can already frame it up instantly within your mind, within your eye straight away. So I just saw a composition straight away. I knew what I wanted to shoot, and it's just point and shoot. Line it up, shoot. Bring it to my eye and shoot. It's very intuitive, this focal length, if you enjoy it. I can see how it may drive some people mad, but for me, I definitely love the focal length. I will say straight off the bat that for such an expensive camera, the autofocus is pretty average. I mean, I'm having a lot of luck in single point, which seems to be the general consensus from what I read online about the 43. Everyone's like, yeah, single point it's okay, but as soon as you try and do continuous or tracking, or I'm even finding real quick single point is average at best. But I'm used to using manual focus lenses on my SL2, manual Leica R-mount lenses. So the manual focus experience is actually pretty good. So if you want to flip it in a manual into a tricky situation, that may just be your best bet. But my God, some of the images from inside the record store then, this lens is phenomenal. And I think that at the end of the day, you're buying this camera for this lens specifically, for the output, the fidelity, the sharpness, the micro contrast, that little bit of Leica magic. Whatever they've done, secret sauce wise, that is why you're buying this camera specifically. It's for this 43. It is actually, at f2, it's to die for. So I'll say while we're just waiting for the lights to turn green, everything that I love about my SL2, the EVF, the menu systems, especially the touchscreen, it all carries over into this camera, which is fantastic. Now, I did own the Leica Q2 a couple of years ago when it came out, and that was phenomenal, same ergonomics, same everything as this essentially, but we've got a better autofocus sensor, EVF, pretty much better across the board with the 3 series, the Q3 series. But 28 just wasn't my jam at the time. I could live with, if I was just doing street photography non-stop, I probably could live with the 28, but I always thought to myself I'd be much happier with a 35 or a 50, like everyone else who's had the Q2 and didn't gel with it. That was pretty much the same gripe. It was never the camera or anything to do with the UI or interface. It was always, being stuck at 28. And I did own the Ricoh GR3X, so the 40mm, for a little while. And that was fantastic. Love the focal length, love the compact, everything like that, but again, really small camera. But I feel like the Q343 just takes that, the GR3X with the 40mm lens and, gives it a shot of steroids, and it just beefs and pumps everything up into an absolutely perfect package if that's what you're going for with the compact cameras. But it's starting to get pretty grey, so he's going to buck it down soon. So, I haven't purchased the camera yet. I'm still just trialing it, so I don't want to get caught in a torrential downpour. So we might try and find some cover. Definitely score 1 for modern weather sealing. Thank God for that. Though now that it's raining and umbrellas have come out and it's wet and it's gone really dark and overcast and we've got a lot more contrast on the streets, it's actually probably going to make some more interesting black and white images. So I'm actually pretty excited that I'm out here right now with this camera and this lens and it's raining and woo-hoo. Anyway, I'm gonna slowly walk around. I'll show you what I've been doing. Everyone thinks I'm super sus because I'm essentially walking around like this through the rain with the camera under here, but everyone's like, what the hell is he holding under his jumper? So I'm sure I look sus to some people, but you know what I need to check? Is the Osmo Pocket 3 weatherproof? Otherwise we might be in trouble here. All right, so my hour is up. Actually, wait a sec. Sorry. Do you guys mind if I take some photos of you while you're trotting along? Cool. I can do it one-handed with a coffee, yeah. Thanks, guys. I mean, you couldn't not. We rarely get to see coppers on horses rolling through the streets of Perth. We do have a small mounted division here in WA, but not a big one. Anyway, walking back to the car because the hour is up, and go home, edit some photos, take a look, and then we'll sit down, we'll go through the photos together and shoot the shit, so to speak, and see what I think. But pretty positive so far. It has been a while since I've been that blown away by a lens, I have to say, because the body, it's pretty good, but I mean, going through these images, which I'm going to start to overlay across the top of us now, I am just flabbergasted by the image quality of this 43. Now, I know I was talking about shooting, a lot of black and white, and all, the rain was coming down, but to be honest, the color fidelity and the contrast, what comes off this lens, kind of made me want to edit in color. Surprisingly, the black and whites were absolutely sublime, and I can see this camera being, most of the time shooting it in black and white personally, but the color that this thing can render, the sensor, you're going to get the same output sensor-wise. It's the lens that's the magic here, guys, because it's the same sensor in the SL3. It's probably exactly the same sensor that is in the Sony A7R5 and the A7CR, just with Sony's magic on it, and then Leica have obviously got their magic on it. Could be the same sensor in the Panasonic. Doesn't matter what Leica do with their color science and the way their menus work, and especially this lens. Wow. Oh my God. I was just massively impressed. A couple things to go over and reiterate. I don't like electronic shutter. I'm not a huge fan because sometimes you can get that jello wobbly effect. So, only having, because it's a leaf shutter, yeah, I can sync flash at any speed, blah, blah, blah. You all know the drill. But again, I would prefer if the mechanical shutter went higher than 2000, but because of the lens, I can live with it. The ergonomics are crap, but again, I'd probably get that helium design grip that's going around, which looks amazing, or a thumb rest grip, and that would solve that problem. The autofocus was the other issue. I did miss a whole bunch of shots. They, weren't ideal. Missed a few, but again, because of what I'm seeing performance-wise from this lens, I will live with all the shortcomings and just cross my fingers and hope that some firmware updates down the track. Leica and Panasonic are married together now. The S1R2 is pretty fantastic, and all the autofocus and contrast phase coming out of that married relationship. So I'm sure maybe a couple autofocus firmware updates would improve this. Fantastic down the track. But again, having, just compared to the Q2, let's say, the flip screen, great. Improved EVF, great. This lens is just amazing. I can't get over it, and I have to say that is the standout feature here. That's what you're buying. Don't think of it as you're buying yourself this camera, this 61 megapixels and all that. If you look at it simply from the point of view of this lens, of a 43 Apo Summicron, and again, when you look at how much the 50 Apo Summicron costs, it's about the same price as this camera and body. So when you look at it like that, you're buying a lens, you're getting the camera for free. That's how I reckon most people, including myself, could probably justify this purchase. Now, we have one more test to do to solidify whether or not this is a one and done camera for me. I'm really, really mad. I'm about to text Sol, one of the brothers who owns Camera Electronic, who's, let me have this one to play around with, and I'm pretty much going to text him and say, I hate you, because now I want to buy it, but, still got to pony up 10 grand for this second-hand one. Blows my mind. Anyway, the test, one moment, is going to be whether or not I can scan some negatives off my Pentax 6.7. So I got some 6.7 negatives here set up on my copy stand behind me, guys. Now, the 6.7 with the 105, this is my 6.7, late model 6.7 with the SMC, the last model 105 lens. I love this thing, and I love shooting black and white out of this thing, and it's not something I would ever give up. And with my black and white film workflow, as you guys know, I shoot, develop, scan, do everything at home. So what I'm hoping is, because that extra little secret that the Q system cameras pack, the good old macro function, I'm pretty sure I should be able to scan the 6.7 negatives. I don't think it's going to work much for 35mm, but we'll get into that in a bit. But if this works out, it's a one and done camera for me.
For 2 seconds, I also just like to go in and always, the same thing I do on my my SL2, sorry, is I always use the electronic shutter when it comes to this. All right, 2, 1. Let's go look in the computer.
Anyway, we're looking at the crop. It's a pretty heavy crop. I would say, we're kind of right in. Megapixel wise, we're probably down to 20 megapixels, but I can live with that. I think the Q343 might actually be my one and done. Shit, I don't want to spend that much money. So surprise, surprise, guys. I already filmed that section. That was the first thing I tried when I got home from street photography. I set it up, I had a crack at it, and yes, I can get really, really good 6-7 scans. It still ends up being, still 4,000 by 3,700 pixels. So still 4,000 pixels on the long edge. That's still more than enough. And considering the quality of this lens, and in the macro mode, it is astounding. It solves that dilemma for me of, well, I still need one digital camera that can shoot a little bit of video. The Q can do it, and has that option. So I think the SL2 might be saying bye-bye, and we might be replacing it with a far more expensive camera. Though, I will still say the Leica SL2 is probably the best value Leica you can get if you want a digital Leica. The best value one on the market right now. Amazing camera, more than capable, unless, the autofocus. We all know the contrast detect. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that today. But the Q343 has blown me away. When Leica announced it, I was, oh my God, fantastic. And I saw the price tag and I was like trying to figure out how the hell I was going to be able to afford one. I still can't really afford one, but it's impressed me so much. I've never come back from a shoot and really looked at the photos only a couple times, I would say, in my life where whatever I've produced off the lens combination camera, and it's blown me away, and this truly has. I think it is worth the money. Like I said, that lens is worth the money, and you just got to look at it in that terms. You're getting the lens, and essentially you're getting the camera for bugger all because the lens is so amazing. Anyway, I'm going to sign off for now. I'm still not 100%. I'm going to figure out a few things to see if I can pull the trigger, but the Q343 and that hefty price tag, it is definitely worth it.